Thank you, Tara, and welcome everyone. Glad you could join us this afternoon. If you're in the West Texas area, you're seeing a very dirty, dusty day like I am. And if you're not in the Lubbock area, congratulations. I'm happy for you. To get us kicked off, we're going to talk about the Aware new navigation rollout and kind of like what are the goals, what are we trying to accomplish, and what are guiding principles. And if you've been in Aware Classic recently, you've probably seen up near the top that Try Aware Beta button, and some of you may have played with it and some of you may have not. But please note that while we were doing this initiative, we went into this knowing that what we wanted to accomplish with this new user experience is to simplify access to the things you use most often, to make sure all things migrate into the new Aware beta space. And we're going to try to keep Classic available until the official switch is 100% done, which is that second image. If you're in the beta space, you can see you can get back to Classic if you need to. From a timeline perspective, and keep in mind, this timeline is fluid in nature. If you've attended one of the previous parts of this webinar series, you may notice that this calendar has shifted and changed a little bit. But keep in mind, as we're doing this, ongoing updates and connections in the new navigation space are going to be happening throughout the remainder of this school year. The new navigation space as a default access is going to be happening throughout the month of April. And what's going to end up happening there is we're going to have a rolling release or a set of phased releases throughout that month so that certain percentages of our customers get exposed to that at a time. Now we're doing that, and we're going to try to reserve questions that pop into the Q&A about the rollout for the very end. So if you drop any about the rollout, just be aware that we'll probably wait on the rollout specific questions until the very end. But the reason we're doing that as a rollout is so that we can really stress test everything and make sure it's performant in a way that makes sense before we just hit the trigger and say everyone has beta as the default access. So we're trying to make this as no harm, as little harm as possible going out to all of our users. And then sometime through the summer of 2023, we will actually retire Aware Classic. Right now, that is slated for near the end of July. Again, a lot of these things are fluid, so just keep that in mind. Some of these dates may shift and change as we go. So what's new with the Aware beta? If you've come to some of the previous mini webinars, you know that I try to highlight the newest connections first in case you want to go ahead and drop off after the newest connections and then review the older connections after that. So that's where we will begin. When you log into the Aware beta space the first time, you'll notice on the left side this new navigation. You've got a whole slew of options depending on your rights and levels of access. And we've started housing settings under these gear options and things of that nature. I'm going to dive into those here in just a minute. But again, just to review, our goal is to really try to simplify and streamline how you access things like data views, assessments, forms, and your student profiles. So here's what's new. The item bank is now officially connected into the Aware beta space. You'll notice if you click the questions and resources under item bank, it loads the old navigation for item bank. The reason we're loading the old navigation is because there are intentions and plans to really enhance item banks in the long run. We just couldn't get those fitted in before it was time for us to get beta as the default access. So keep your eye on item banks as you go, but you can now access item banks through the new navigation. We also have various administration settings. So this will apply mostly if you're a district or campus level administrator, where the gears appear next to analysis, assessments, item banks, and students, so that you can do the things that you would do in Classic to modify and manage those things. And lastly, you'll notice there are new report buttons in the left navigation that will let you go and run any of the reports that you could run in the Classic space as well, including those lead forward reports, accountability reports, etc. Now, from here, I'm going to dive into reviewing previous release functionality, and I'm going to leave the slideshow for just a little bit, and I'm going to show you some of the things that are in here, and I'm going to spend about 10 minutes on showing you some of this, and then we'll dive into tips on this rollout for your districts and things that you might want to consider. So the first one I want to show you is an administrator view. You notice here, if you were to actually log into Eduphoria, then click Aware, you land here on the overview if you're going into beta. Now, in the overview, you'll notice two cards. There's recently scored assessments and then last visited assessments. If I've recently edited an assessment, I get those 5 most recently edited assessments here just to help remove clicks. I need to go back into this assessment. I didn't finish. I had to pause for a meeting. I had to pause for lunch. I'm not done with this Math STA demo one. I click it, it loads me straight into that one without having to find it in the navigation tree or to search for it by name. Similarly, within the overview shows your most recently scored assessments, the top 5. And so if I know as an administrator or even as a teacher, my kids just finished STA 8th grade math test example, I want to go see those results right now. I can click that straight from the overview and it'll take me straight into that data view. And then I can manipulate the data view from here, just like I could in Classic. From beyond the overview, we get into an area like data views where we've tried to streamline and simplify things, where you have a little more flexibility and ease of use when you go in to actually configure a data view. Now, you'll hit a landing page where you can look at a data view bank, which is where all of the previous saved data views were. And you can configure a quick view, which is the current quick views in Classic with the tree dropdown. But instead of dropdown trees, you get a handy dandy table that is filterable by years, grades, subjects, etc., or even by title. And so if I know what I'm looking for, I can just start typing the name of it, go click it, and then I can choose right off the bat. Instead of defaulting to student scores, I can default to any of the quick view templates that I have access to. Hit continue, and it'll load up that data view, no problem. So you notice as I did that, it was 1, 2, a quick search, or a couple of filters. We're talking 3 or 4 clicks total. To find that data view back in Classic, I'd have to go to quick views. I'd have to go to district-based assessments, 2 clicks. This year, 3 clicks. 4 clicks for the grade, then math, then there's the example test. So several clicks, we've streamlined it and just minimized it so you can get to where you were as quickly as possible, where you're wanting to see as quickly as possible. Back to the beta space, same thing with the author table. I'm going to hit that real fast before I show you saved data views. I go to author, I see a list of assessments right off the bat. This one typically loads your most recently accessed ones up at the top. And as you scroll down, you'll see fewer and fewer, less further back in history as far as when you actually accessed those. You see status, you see various information. All of these things are filterable and all of these things are searchable. And then at the top, you can access your rubric assessments and your inventory assessments, which will be actually connected potentially later today. So be looking for that. The inventory assessment should be up and running later today. You can start a new assessment straight here up at the top. I click new assessment and create any of the assessment options that exist to me. And it's just surfacing this information in your access right here in one handy space versus the Classic area where you had to have, again, a drop-down tree to go to district assessments and then pick the type that you had and then go through and decide, was it pending? Was it active? What subject did I have it under? And the new space just helps make that a little simpler. Back to data views real fast. In data views on this landing page, you'll notice that there's a saved data view bank. If I go to the data views bank, I can see here all of the data views that I have saved and quick views that I have shared with me. Whereas before in Classic, they could be stored in several different areas, whether they were campus views, district views, or my saved views. They're in many different areas. In Classic, it's a one-stop shop, and we've changed the labeling so that you can easily tell at a glance that this one is a saved view shared with all of my campus administrators. This one is a quick view with campus administrators. This one's a quick view for campus teachers, etc. You can edit them, and new functionality, you can favorite some of them. You can favorite up to 5, and as you favorite them, it populates in that data view bank card so that if there are 5 data views that you have saved that you want to access on the fly without having to go and surf and look for them, they're just right there, click of a button, up to 5 of them. You have access right there, handy dandy. So we've gone over data views. You might see single test analysis. Single test analysis is for our premium customers, so I won't hit that now. You can see reports. Reports works just like it did in Classic. I click the button, I can go access them, load them as usual. And then just to highlight the settings, again, all settings are based on rights, so you have to have the rights to actually see these. But I click the analysis and I can see my configuration options, upload test files. Next to assessments, I have assessment settings. I have student inventory settings. I have team settings and item bank, all the item bank settings, and finally students, which has the most. Notice they're sectioned out and grouped by this gray title. All of my monitor group and list settings are here. My student settings are here. My form settings are here. If you're an administrator and you need to proctor an assessment, you can now, if you have the right, access proctor, choose your campus, find your teacher, And once you load that teacher, if there are active tests for that teacher, you actually get a space that's very similar to the proctoring for the teacher view, where you can select the assessment, go and begin online proctoring and manage that from there. As mentioned before, item banks will just load the previous UI where you have the drill downs. Again, be looking for enhancements here over the coming months. You have reports for item banks. This is a new space where student profiles are now accessible in one spot. And again, your rights and access change the number of students that you have access to in this area. But one thing that's really powerful about this profiles for students is I now have the ability to filter. As I expand my filter options, I can now filter by program. I can filter by monitor list and monitor groups that are saved. I can filter by race and ethnicity, forms that are attached to students, grade levels, and even courses. I can search for, let's say I need to know how many kids I have in pre-AP Algebra 1. I can check it, apply, and the table will upload and show me I have 64 students in Algebra 1. Now you'd notice as I reset the filters, it shows right here, I'm only showing the first 250 students. I can force it to go ahead and load them all. So if you're in a district, like with this example, 13,000 students, you can go ahead and get them all in there. We did that for performance sake. So just as a heads up right there. The student profile table can hide columns, so I can hide grade and school. And then once I have this table looking exactly like I want it to, I can export it as a CSV and use that for potentially reporting purposes, or just, I'm curious and need to go investigate and find the thing and tell some people about it. Last couple of things I want to highlight in the new nav. We have access to portfolios, and portfolios works the same. I don't have really any preloaded into here, but you access portfolios and it shows you which portfolios you have available. And once you click it, it'll load the portfolio. You can see the students. And then finally, the last thing I want to highlight is forms. If you have access to access those forms, up at the top, you can select district or school forms, and it will change the table accordingly. You can filter by the various categories that appear or by title. And you'll notice in the table, you have parent tables and parent forms, and some of your forms have sub forms that are attached to it. It was a little less clear in Classic which forms were sub forms and otherwise. So we've cleared that up a little bit visually speaking so that you can see the parent forms and the sub forms attached to it. As you search for various forms, if I search for the word team, it captures, hey, this sub form is a team form or at least has team in the title. So all those forms are accessible there. And once you click on one, it loads the same space that you would use to edit the forms as it did in Classic. And it's being a little bit slow at the moment. There it goes. And so you can see, and again, rights-based, you can see the security or log or even the form editor if you have the rights to do so. Okay. That being said, I'm going to go back to my slideshow. That's the Aware beta space as a really fast flyover. I'm going to breeze through some of these tips for the transition. So as we go into the rollout and as we transition through the summer from one school year to the next, there are opportunities that we can really consider when we're trying to make sure our staff are prepared for this new Aware navigation space. So are we ready to start guiding our staff? We'd really like to throw just some tips out there, and these are just suggestions. You may have your own ideas, of course, and please execute them as you see fit. But communication of this new Aware is going to be key. Ask yourself if you're signed up for the newsletters. Have you been seeing and reading the newsletters? Get that most up-to-date information on all initiatives we do with Eduphoria, but especially the new Aware navigation, and share that with your pertinent staff members. If you're a district administrator, share it with your principals. Make sure principals are getting it out. Your teachers can even sign up for the newsletter if they need to. Look for the in-app announcements. You log in from time to time, and you may notice a window that pops up that says, hey, here's a new thing. We've been using those in-app announcements to announce Aware new navigation is coming. Beta will be the default soon. Make sure you're paying attention to those and look for those. Encourage your staff to use the new navigation now. The more that they can become familiar with it, the easier the transition will be moving into next year. Next, communicate the change with campus administrators and staff, potentially during a staff meeting here near the end of the school year. Like Tara mentioned, all of these mini webinars are being recorded. They're approximately 30 minutes in length. I don't know that you want to take a full 30 minutes, but if nothing else, show them a little bit of the one of the recorded mini webinars so the teachers can see, hey, I actually have a how-to video essentially right here. This is how I access this. This is how I do this. This is how I do this. Or even build your own professional development, mini development with one-clicks, a slideshow, you know, those kinds of things. So you can share that with your staff during a staff meeting here at the end of the year. Model the new interface for staff during starter school PD time is another way you can really dive into this. You need to prepare instructions on those most commonly accessed portions of Aware. Show, again, a recording of that mini webinar. Allow time for self-paced exploration. And we've linked here a great resource that Tara can tell you quite a bit more about. But there's an online learning e-course essentially from Eduphoria that will guide teachers and other users step by step through everything that they need to do in the new space. And then ask, does your district have a local Aware training materials to consider? Like, do you have how-to slideshows for doing this or that? Or do you have PDFs that show how to do this or that? Now is the time, now that the new nav is being, has been pretty much finalized, minus a few small performance tweaks here and there. Now's the time to dive into that and start updating those materials for the start of the year next year. And do you have Aware Premium? Consider building or revising those materials to include things like single test analysis. Next, as we do the rollout, it's really important that we report issues in the new AwareNav space. As you're into the beta space, if you notice something that's wrong or missing, let us know. If you're not sure if it's missing, you can probably search the online help articles and find out. Maybe it's just in a space you weren't familiar with. But we really highly suggest that you work out some workflows so that you funnel all feedback related to the new navigation through one key district representative. This is going to help streamline communication with Eduphoria and districts so that we don't have multiple reports of the same issue within the same district coming into our support teams. As always, contact support via email or with the phone number shown on the screen. And be as detailed as you can. Hey, in Classic, I can do this. In the new space, I think this is missing. I don't see it, or this is broken. Notice when I click this here, white screen, whatever happens. Remember, again, we wanted to do no harm. Aware Classic will still be an option. Even though beta will be the default view, Aware Classic will be available at least through the summer of 2023, looking at the end of July to close out the Aware Classic space. You can still complete tasks in Aware Classic as you need to if an issue arises and we get that opportunity to fix it. And then don't forget to report issues in general. Once Classic retires, you can't go back to it if something is missing to find it after we do retire it. So spend that time exploring and diving into it. We do have a few, we have at least one more future webinar coming up. We're going to, again, demo the newest features. As new features come out, we're going to review the user interface one more time. We're going to talk about tips for the Aware rollout. This is just a reminder of the rollout timeline. We're looking through April to release through phases, and then Classic will likely retire or sunset in July. And then here's our next mini webinar. Highly encourage your team and highly encourage your principals, highly encourage anyone you need to attend the next webinar. It's on March 22nd. It is during the lunchtime, but even if you register and can't attend, you'll get that recording. So go ahead and encourage registration for that. And then I'll let Tara kind of talk about these last 2 points, and then we'll open it up to Q&A.
So also listed here, you have the link to the playlist that contains all of the previously recorded content. It will soon have today's content. In the future, we'll have additional recordings from our mini series. And then we are maintaining online help guides to help you navigate to all of these updated locations. So that is a great place to go in our Aware online help and getting started in Aware, and also for announcements as we get closer to this rollout. You can follow this article series so you see when new articles are published or when updates are made for information that will be pertinent to you. And then Jeremy, I do have some questions saved for you. The first one being, is custom import test already hooked up in the new navigation? And if so, where is that accessible?
So within the new navigation, I believe we're talking about uploading a test. Is that correct?
They custom import. So upload test files, maybe what we're discussing.
So that would be there in that new nav if that's what we were actually wondering about, where you could upload a test file. If you have the right to do so, it's under that gear next to analysis, upload test file, and then you get the same space where you could upload the file by choosing the file, et cetera, here.
Okay. If that didn't address the question, please repost with some clarifying information so we can help you out. Something kind of bundling two questions together. On the recently scored window, currently we're noticing that teachers are seeing subjects that they are not teaching. So wondering if there's a way to preset or default so that they're seeing their rostered courses, or potentially if when they're in that assessment data table to be able to kind of have some saved or defaulted filters so they're getting that same view each time.
That's actually excellent feedback. And presently, there is not an ability to do that at the moment. However, we have gotten some of that feedback and it's on our radar to try to fine tune some of that. Something we're exploring, of course, is to try to make it so that maybe you can apply some settings to this to, if I'm only a math teacher, only in third grade, only third grade math pops up. Similarly with data views and you configure, we're exploring the idea of sticky filters. Right now within Classic, you have the ability to see all test data for your kids as they're rostered in Classic. This table does the same thing. So even though I'm not teaching reading, I can go see that reading for my kids if they're rostered to me. So we're exploring the idea of trying to implement something kind of like sticky filters so that I really only want this year and this grade to pop up anytime I load the table. And so that whatever your last filters were, they stay that way until you decide to manually change them. So that is something we are exploring. The final solution is not done yet, but no, it is on our radar.
Thank you. We also have another question related to data analysis. How in the Aware new navigation are we able to auto summarize tests?
Presently, and I believe we're maybe talking about the triple clicking behavior, if not at least something similar. Currently, that is being built like as we speak. And so the idea here is, and I'll reset filters, is we would have the ability to select more than one assessment with little check boxes. And then in this window, we would have some sort of button that would allow you to select, hey, I want to summarize this by subject. And then it would execute very similar to the way the triple click would. And Christy Miranda, I hope that just answered that question you just popped up. It doesn't happen now in beta, but we're executing a way to get that built in similarly. Because there's really nowhere to triple click the way, because we can't triple click a filter or those kinds of things. So we would make it so that you select multiple assessments, hit a button, hit continue, it'll do what you're looking for.
Thank you for that explanation. We have another question. It might require some follow-up to clarify, but they're stating that currently the district is defaulted now under author. Is there a way to set other defaults?
I was assuming everyone should be defaulting to the overview rather than author. Maybe it's particular users that, if you could reach out to support with some more details on that one, I would like to follow up on that.
Okay, thank you for that, Jeremy. That sounds like an appropriate next step. We have a question related to the team test in beta versus classic. So can you give us any explanation on our team test currently accessible in the new navigation space?
That is a bug that we are aware of. And before we make beta the default access, it will be fixed. So yes, that is a bug. We know team tests aren't working the way they should in the beta space, but it will be fixed before we start defaulting things in April.
Okay, and the final question currently submitted. Oh, another one just popped in, so we'll head to that one next. Is there a report option that shows exactly what students chose as their answer on an interactive item type? For example, what students put for a text entry question? Could you talk to us a little bit about data analysis for interactive item types?
So within data views, that is limited. And so for the most part, the new TEIs are really only reporting within data views the credit that they received versus the scoring options that were chose for that item. However, single test analysis, which is a premium feature, does have that ability. And I don't have a test ready to, this one might be a good one, where within the new space, you actually can see an individual response analysis and see exactly on the answer distribution or even underneath. And I don't have a question selected specifically that might be like a text entry, but you can see exactly what was input in the response within the single test space.
Okay. The other question that came in was following up from the previous question. And I still think with this limited information and not exploring the site, we will need that follow-up through a support ticket so that we can just make sure we're understanding exactly what you're seeing and investigate that together with you.
Yeah, just dittoing what you just said. Yeah, put in a support ticket and try to include some screenshots, and then we'll try to follow up on that.
Okay, I'm scanning the chat for anything that might have bubbled up there. I do see something came in related to licensing between Aware and Aware Premium. So I'm gonna save your name for those that submitted that and have our account management team follow up with you directly. This is something they'll need to reach out to you to clarify information there. And Jeremy, if you'll read what just came into the Q&A and see if you have a response there.
When you click author, the test level is defaulted to district. Oh, that is, you are correct.
Okay.
That is a default that has been built in. If it is strongly desired for that not to be the function, then a follow-up with support as a feature request or an enhancement would probably be the way to go there.
Okay, so just to reiterate, a feature request or feature enhancement to change that default being selected as district will help us gather that feedback to make any changes to the current functionality. Awesome. We had another question come in via the chat related to reports being downloaded or exported into Excel or PDF. I'm not 100% certain which reports they might have been referring to when the question came in.
So when we're talking about reports, like any of these reports that are built in, like the lead forward reports, accountability reports, or summary data reports, those will behave just like as they always have. If they were exportable or printable, it will continue to be exportable or printable. If we're talking about student profiles and managing, hey, I want to search and see how many kids I have in pre-AP, whatever the course may be, not engineering, but maybe chemistry, and I apply that and I get a new list. This is actually exportable as a CSV with this export button right here.
Okay, and then another question that's come in through the chat related to team test or related to teams in general. Can you show us where we can go to view teams that exist that we have access to?
To view your teams, it would be under this gear drop down next to assessments, and this would work for teachers or administrators. But you have team settings as one of the last two options under this gear where you can either create a team or edit my teams, and it'll load. And this particular user doesn't appear to be a part of any teams. But if you were, the teams would generate here, and then you could search and access them as you would.
And this is one of those things that was recently hooked up. So this is new within the navigation here that we're demonstrating today. Okay.
There we go. This user has some teams.
Awesome.
This is a teacher. So yeah, it was just, and that's collapsed. You'll notice it does collapse, which is kind of nice for that real estate, but under assessments, edit my teams, and then you'll get that space.
Okay. The only other question I've seen come in is a date correction for the next webinar in this series. It is March 21st, not 22nd, like we saw on the slide. So we'll get that corrected before that email goes out, and it is correct on the registration website. One more follow-up question related to the teams that you were just previewing with us, Jeremy, is Currently, they're seeing the entire list or the entire district list of teams. Is there a way to filter that down by school?
I would need to follow up on that, and try to recall how it works within Classic, especially for district users. Because if you're editing teams, I think the space, it's just importing exactly what was available in Classic. And so if it wasn't available in Classic, it won't be available now unless we get feedback that says, hey, we definitely need to be able to do that.